Hey, how's it going everyone, and welcome to another project. We are going to create today a compound interest calculator using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. Actually, the HTML and CSS files are down in the description below, so please consider downloading them because I'm only going to go over the JavaScript part of this video. I just considered that the video will be extremely long if all the HTML and CSS. Also, I did a live stream on my process of designing this. Not the best design. But, well, I only had like 30 minutes to spare before my kid got back from school and I had to make homemade pizza. Woo! So this is going to be the project. We're going to create this calculator. This will, let's just give it an example. Let's say you have $1,000 and you want to deposit them. Now, if you would deposit them, and let's say that the interest rate over a period of 10 years will be 5%. And as I said, over 10 years, then you would have, after that 10 years, $1,647.01 at the end. Now, let's say you would like to add a monthly contribution to this over these 10 years of $100. Let's see how this will work out. Then you will have, at the end of those 10 years, $17,175. Woo! So as you can see, investing money is really, really important. And even if you, let's say you're 30 and you wish to go into pension with 67 is, I believe, now the pension age, then let's say you would have 37 years, then this should be $134,385. Extraordinary. So I think this is a pretty cool calculator, and if you're excited, then please give this video a thumbs up. And with this being said, let's get started with the project. Now on the left side, I just have an empty folder. Within here, I'm going to create a index.html file. Index.html, and I forgot the index. And within here, I'm just going to copy and paste the code. I'm going to go over the code, but I don't want to create it once again. So we just have a simple boilerplate. We have here a title of compound interest calculator. We have here a style sheet already linked up. I'm going to create the style, the CSS file, just in a couple of seconds. Then we have an h1, which is this title up here with a class of title. Is going to be styled automatically. Then comes a form. As you can see, the form and the result are separately, this being the form, this entire thing, and this is the result part of the project. Now in the form we have 4 input tags, basically these 4 fields. Each one of them has a type of number, each one of them has a ID as an identifier, and it has a placeholder for whatever you have to give this a refresh, or for wherever the user would need to type in here. Then at the end of the form, we have a submit button with the type of, submit that will calculate the form. So when we click this button, it will calculate the form. Now, as you can see, I didn't type in anything, so I'm going to get this alert. This is just a simple validation process for the form. I didn't do anything funky. Now the form has, the project has 2 parts. You can either calculate your interest rates, let's say $5,000, 7% and 10 years, without the monthly contribution, so I can calculate it. And then you could also add a monthly contribution. Let's say we're going to add $150 each and every month, and it's going to recalculate it once again. So a very quick thing, at the end of the project, I'm also going to add this animation. As you can see right here, if I'm changing something, that this actually animated. Whoa, what am I doing here? This is actually animating in, so the result is actually, let's do it, and animate in, and if I change this to 150, it's going to animate in again. So I'm going to do this part at the end, so please stick around to the end so you can see how I'm adding animation using JavaScript. All right, now with this being said, let's also create a style.css file. And within here, again, I'm going to copy in the code. Again, I did this in a live stream, so if you want to see my thought process on this, then please go ahead and check out that live stream. Is already on my page. Okay, so I just did a basic reset for margins, paddings, box sizing, and added the font family of sans serif. We should, let me also open up our project. So right click, open up the project. There we go. This one is ours. Let's change something here. This is number 2. Okay, so this is number 2, so we can see which one is which. I took out all of the margins and padding, added to the body a background color and a color. As you can see here, hexadecimal colors. Then some style to the title class. Also, this down here has a title class, the result. As you can see down here, it has a class of title. And don't forget to add a script that then later on. Okay, we have the form as with an ID. I give it some max width, margin, top and bottom 4 RAM, left and right auto. This is why it's centering itself. Then I displayed all of its content, which are the input text and the button up down here as flex, and then I flexed it in a flex direction column. I'm flexing. Woo! Then I gave it a gap of 15 pixels, which are these distances right here. As you can see, if I increase it, it's going to be much larger. Okay, then some padding all around the items, and then border radius 5 and box shadow. And the input tags have no outlines, no borders. They have a border radius of 5 pixels, a height of 60 pixels, font size, colors, and so forth and so on. And this right here is how let me actually comment this part out really quickly. If you don't have, well, just so if you don't have this in, you can see these arrows up here, and I hate these arrows. So this is why, I'm using, here we go, this WebKit, which basically takes out those arrows. This is for Chrome, Edge, Opera, and so forth and so on, and this is only for Firefox. So if you're using Firefox, then you only need to type in this part. Okay, the button again has just basic styling, cursor pointer, so forth and so on. Hover effect, if I hover with it, it's going to get a bit darker. Active effect, if I click on it, you can see it's getting smaller. This is this transform scale 0.98, and the result is down here. This is this real, yeah, I should have added it as a class where maybe I do this. So in order for this not to appear, I should have on click add a class. Just check my, I'm going to do this in JavaScript. So on click add a class, this is going to add this style to it because we actually don't need it. Yeah, I'm going to do it. So right here we have a title, fade. This is how the animation will work then. So if the title has a class of fade, then it's going to also have this animation, which is a keyframe. It's going to take 0.2 seconds. You can either increase or decrease this, and the animation time curve is going to be linear. So the phase is basically going to go from 0% to 100% with at its 0% opacity of 0, transform translate on the y-axis, basically from top to bottom, with minus 100. It's going to come from the top to the bottom. This is our finished project. So it's going to come from the top to the bottom with from minus 100 pixels. You can also increase this 200 pixels. It's going to come much quicker because it's coming from far away, but it's going to stop down here. Okay, it's also going to come to a opacity of 1. This is why it has that fade in effect. So you can also increase the speed or decrease the speed using this. It's going to take a bit longer, and I should have done this in my other project. But yeah, so this is the project. Hope you're excited. Let's actually get started with our JavaScript. So let's create a JavaScript file. Let's call this script.js. And first things, boom. First, let's get all elements from the DOM using ID. So we're going to get all elements. What am I? The elements from the using the ID selector. I did a poll on YouTube, and the vast majority, I think it was over 90%, wanted to get element by ID, not using query selector. I can also understand it because it's extremely clear what you're doing. So I actually love that you decided, you all wonderful people decided to get all elements by ID. So let's get started. Let's going to create a const. First things first, we're going to get our compounded interest calculator, which is this form. So basically I'm going to go from top to bottom, and the very first ID will be this. So let's go into a script tag and going to paste it in, change it to a lowercase, then it's going to be equal to document.getElement by ID. I almost typed in Q for query selector. Open and close curly brackets, and there we go. There's our ID. I'm also going to console log everything down here. So const, just to show you, inspect, right click, inspect, and open up the console. You can see that not the render. So I can show you that we are getting the elements. So here, that was the wrong console, sorry. So here, and we should, there we go. We got our form. We have a form and everything that is in the form, which is basically nothing. Why? Okay, there we go now. So we got our form. We have a lot of input tags. Next, we're going to get all of those inputs. We're going to get our interest rate. So copy this ID, go in here. One quick thing, you could also do here a comma and then just type in the the text and then assign this to a document dot get element by ID. I typed in Q again, sorry, and type in this. As you can see, it boom. Sorry, if I copy this, console log it down here, then I should also console log this. So you don't have to necessarily so you don't have to necessarily declare this as const again, because all of them will be as a constant variable. Okay, so you can either do it this way or you can type in const and so on and so on. So let's switch things up a bit, and I'm going to do it this way. The next one is going to be years. No, wait, the first one should be initial balance. Sorry, let's go one back. This should be initial balance. Type it in here. You know what, just for clarity, I'm still going to use const, but just remember I could do that. Please leave a comment in the comment section below if you want me to show you how the other part works. So document, get element by ID, and let's paste in here our initial balance sheet. This ends there. This is going to be a const again. Don't need you. I'm going to delete you, and this should also work. Let's paste you in here in order to be logged. Balance, there we go. We have a balance, we have an input. Next up will be then the result, no, the years. So this field, once again, const years, almost destructured it. Document, get element by ID, and we're gonna grab onto the ID of years. And now for the last one, which will be a monthly contribution. Again, const monthly contribution. I'm going to change it just in a couple of seconds to lowercase document dot get element by ID and monthly contribution, and you should be a lowercase because we're not declaring classes here. So let's also console log this, and we know that we have everything that we need. Okay, form, input, and input. So if you're wondering why I'm not grabbing onto the button, is because when we're submitting the form, it already has the type of submit, so don't have to add an event listener or click to it and so forth and so on. So basically writing less code. Okay, the last thing that we need is our result. So let's grab onto the ID of result and go here. Const result should be document dot get element by ID. If you're hearing my daughter screaming, so sorry about that, but she's awake. And let's console log it down here, and we should also see our result. Okay, so we have everything that we need. Next we can, or we could, take care of our form. So we're going to work on the submission and on the validation of the form. So basically, let's get started by grabbing onto the form. This is the compounded interest calculator. It's the idea of the form. We're going to add to this a event listener. So add event listener. We're going to add a event of submit. And when the submit happens, we're going to use a anonymous function. You also use error functions here. Just using really, yes, so back everything really vanilla, because this is a beginner style project. So when the submit event happens, basically when I click on this button, then the form will submit, and everything that will happen in this function will take effect. So as you can see, if I click on it, it's doing a refresh. This is because the form wishes to submit to send the information somewhere, because this is default behavior, and we can stop its default behavior by taking a hold of this event. So let's pass in the event here in the callback function. Then we're going to grab onto the event. We could also console log the event, but you won't see it. So if I do it here, console log, click on it, you will see here a quick flash, and it's going to disappear. Boom, you didn't see it. It console logged the event of submit. So you can grab onto this because we have to prevent its default behavior. So if I go here, e.default behavior, prevent it, and now if I click on it, it's not going to not prevented, prevent default behavior, sorry about that. So now if I click on it, it's no longer going to submit itself, and it's going to now it's going to console log the event. Okay, so submit event, you can see here is true, and so far and so on. So this is how you stop forms from submitting. I think I showed this like 1,000 million times on my channel, but I still love showing it. Pretty cool. Now for the validation part, so we first want to check two things. Are all of the input fields completed? And actually not all of them. We only need 3. The 4th one is optional, because as you saw in a finished project, let me make the console a little smaller. In a finished project, even if I don't have this, it still calculates. But if I'm missing only one of these, then it shouldn't calculate. So I think, so let's see, 1, 1, 1, it calculates. If I'm missing 1, then it doesn't calculate, okay? This is because we're checking if each of these 3 fields are completed or if they're not empty. So we could do here a if statement, and in that if statement, we're going to check if what do we need here? Let me just comment this out. So if the initial balance, so let's grab onto the initial balance, is empty. Now, how can we check if it's empty? Because this is just the input field, we need to check its value. Okay, so if the value of this is triple equal, this means that it's equal to its type and its value. So it's equal to nothing. Nothing, and this nothing is a string. Then it should alert a message. Say complete all fields. Okay, so let's check this. If I want to submit now, then it's going to alert that complete all fields. But if I complete here only one thing and click on it, then it's going to submit. So you see, it doesn't prompt the alert. So what happens if I'm completing this field? We're still going to check if this is empty. So we need to check each field. This means I'm going to type in here and. So not only the first field, but I also need the interest rate dot value to not be empty. And this is the and sign, and this is the or sign. We're not checking or, but and. The years dot value is also not empty. Why am I typing here plus? Is also not empty. So all 3 need to be completed, need to have some kind of information in here, and we can't type any kind of text. We can only type numbers because the type of input is number. So all 3 have to be completed in order for this to validate. So let's see if I type in here da 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 and da 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 and da da da, then this works. Okay, we can see it submits. Or let's just change, you know what, let's change this console log. Let's change this console log to, so we're going to else. After all, I'm going to leave this console log up here. Wait, okay, I'm going to leave this console log up here. I'm going to comment it out, and we have all 3 of them validated. This means that the alert will not appear, so else, something else should happen, and this, let's say console log valid. Okay, so let's click, let's type in here, pa-bam, 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 and submit and valid. We're going to have the console log valid. You know what, I'm going to also comment out this console log. We don't need it, but I'm still going to leave it in for you to see later on in your finished project. So you can download this also when you're finished. So type in here comment of form validation and submission, or submission and validation, it doesn't matter. So we got our form to validate and to submit only on specific conditions. Now, I don't want the console log here. I actually want here to calculate the compound interest rate. So if everything goes to plan and the form is valid, then it should calculate the compounded interest. So next up, let's create a function for calculating the compounded interest. Okay, we're going to copy this, go down here, say calculate compound interest, type in compound interest. So let's create here a function. You know what, I need to scroll up a bit. We're going to call it compound interest, and we're going to pass in here. Well, what do we actually need here? We need to calculate our monthly contribution, or our compounded interest rate, without adding a monthly contribution to it. But we also want to be able to calculate if we have a monthly contribution. So let's create again a if statement. This if statement is going to check 2 things. So if and else. First things first, we're going to check if the monthly contribution, so this part right here, is empty. So if the monthly contribution, and again its value, so I need to check if this input field dot value is a empty string, so it doesn't have anything in it, then we're going to calculate the contribution with, then we're going to calculate the interest rate without the monthly contribution. So this will return, and where do we actually want to display it? Well, we want to display it in the result part. So we're going to grab onto the result and to its inner HTML, because we want to display it in our DOM. So within here, we're going to assign a function that is going to calculate the compound interest. Now, if we have something in here, then we're just going to copy this, paste it down here. We're going to output a compound interest, and let's just change this with contribution. Okay, so we're going to need two functions. So let's get started with our simple function, which is going to be compound interest. Let's go down here and let's type in here a comment of compound interest function, and let's create a function compound interest, open and close. And I'm going to paste in here something now, because I'm going to create a pretty complex formula. I want you to know from where this comes. So the formula for the compounded interest is as following: A is equal to P times 1 plus R divided by N to the power of N times T. So what does this actually mean? Well, A is the compounded interest. So the future value of the investment or loan, including the interest. Now the P, actually don't know them from my head. This is where I know it. So here's A, what it means. Now P is the principal investment amount. So actually the initial amount that is deposited, this will be P. Now we need R, which is the annual interest rate. So basically this field right here, the interest rate. Then N will be the number of times that the interest is compounded per unit. Basically, N is month. N is actually a month. Now there are more complex formulas to this. You can also extrapolate from this in each week or in each month how much the interest is compounded. But it's really complex. I'm not going to do this in JavaScript right now. And last but not least, T, which is the time the money is invested or borrowed for, which basically the years. Okay, so let's try and recreate this formula, but by using JavaScript. It's actually not that complicated. And in order to know that we will return what we want, I'm going to do here a console log, and I'm going to type in here simple compounding. Okay, so basically if I click here, we're going to have a error or a alert because I didn't investigate anything. So let's type in here these three fields, and simple compounding was just console log. Now if I type something in here, then nothing happens, or I'm going to get an error because this function does not exist. I'm going to create this function a bit later on, but we can see that our conditioning is working. So if I'm going to leave this empty again, and let me close the console. So I'm going to leave this empty, click on calculate the simple compounding. So this function will be triggered and not this one. Okay, so we know that the function works and the conditioning works. Now let's recreate this formula. I'm also going to paste it in here just so you can see it. Let's recreate this formula using JavaScript. So what should this function return? This function will return a P, so the principal amount. Let's type in principal amount times. Now we need 1 plus the interest rate divided by N, which is the number of times the interest rate is compounded per unit. So divided by, actually, let me do this first of all. So within parentheses, let's type in 1 plus the interest rate. Now, when we're passing in here the interest rate, you saw I'm passing in percentages in our finished project. So I'm only passing in, for example, 5%. But I'm passing in here the number 5. Now, 5% is from 100, 0.05. Now, in order to get 0.05, we will divide whatever we pass in here with 100. So basically, if I pass in here 5, I'm actually getting 0.05 because it's 5 divided by 100. It's going to move the dot 2 zeros to left. Okay. Now N, as I said, are the months in 1 year, so it's going to be 12. And now comes the interesting part. So how can we do power of NT? Well, we're going to wrap this into a math.pow. Okay. So this complete thing will be in a math.pow. That means in order to do the power of works as following, or the power 2. The first thing that we put in here is this, and now comma to the power of N, which we know is 12, and T, which is time, will be our years. So times years, not plus, times. Okay, now I typed in here a couple of things which you actually don't have. These are actually arguments, and those arguments are going to pass in here. So the principal amount, the first thing that this function will need is the principal amount. Then it's going to need the interest rate, and then it's going to need the years. So up here, we need to pass those in. Well, we know that our principal amount is the initial balance dot value. So I'm going to pass it in here. Then I'm going to pass in the interest rate. And then I'm going to pass in our year. Is it year? Yeah, year. It should be years. Whatever. Our year dot value. And this should already work. So let's try this. $100 initial investment. Let's say 5%. And we're going to pass it for 10 years. Let's calculate and boom. There we go. Now you see here a small problem. We're going to have a really long number after a comma. We can fix this using, let's go down here, using. We're going to wrap this entire thing. So return, we're going to wrap this entire thing into parentheses and then use the sorry about that, and then use the toFixed. And we're only going to use 2 decimals after a comma. So let's try this again. 500, 2%, 10 years, and hit enter. We're going to get 60. So after comma only 2 decimals. So we have this done. Next, we need our compounded interest rate with contribution. So let's go, I'm going to copy it. Let's go down here. Let's type in another comment. Let's say, well, it's actually what we just typed in here. Compounded interest rate with contribution. And we need to create a function for this. So I'm going to create a function, paste it in here, the name. And again, this is going to take in the same arguments as this does, plus it's also going to take in the monthly contribution. Okay, so I'm going to pass this one in here. Now remember, these are only arguments that are for this function. In order to use these variables, we need to then pass them in, where do we have it? In here. So I'm not going to pass them in here right now. I am going to wait till we're finished with the formula, with the function here. Now, what should this return? Well, it's going to return, again, something that is going to, already going to pass into a parenthesis and use toFixed, because we're going to have the same problem if not. So toFixed and 2. And within this parenthesis, let's pass in the formula for a compounded interest with the monthly contribution to it. Now, the formula is as following. It starts out exactly as this. Let me actually paste it in here. So I'm going to copy and paste it in here. And the formula is as following. It is exactly the same formula as we have up here, but after that, we add the monthly contribution, which is PMT, the monthly contribution, times 1 plus R, and it's exactly the same thing. But this is all that we need, this monthly contribution. So the formula is basically going to be exactly as we had it up here. So I'm going to copy this, paste it into our return, then plus. Now we're going to add to this formula. So we're going to need our monthly contribution plus monthly contribution times this entire thing once again, accepting the principal amount. So month, the power, the year. Now we need to subtract from this 1, and we need to add it in another parenthesis because we don't have square parentheses. So as you can see here, this right here is this right here. Then we're subtracting 1 from it, and now we need to divide it with the interest rate and n, which is 12 again. So let's divide it by open and close parentheses, interest rate, and I'm going to actually copy this again. Okay, and don't forget, this is everything toFixed to 2. So now we can go out to our contribution with interest rate up here and pass in exactly the same thing that we passed in here. So initial balance.value, interest rate.value, years.value, and monthly contribution.value. So you ready to try this? Let's go ahead and let's try our $1,000 in a 5% interest rate for 10 years. I'm going to hit enter on our calculate, and now I'm going to go back and pass in, let's say, a monthly contribution of $100, and as you can see, it's going to recalculate it to another amount. Okay, so without this, it's going to be only $1,600, but if you contribute to this 10 years of, well, 10 years of $100, you can get $70,000. Okay, so last thing that I want to show you is how you can add that animation, the animation that we have here in our style, which is the fade animation. Now all we need to do, as you can see, we have a class of title, and if this class of title also has a class of fade, we have a class of title on our title and also on this down here. But I want to add a class of fade to this title. So what we can do is go up to our evaluation. So I'll calculate, not our calculate, much further to our submission. Actually, we could also add it to our contribution. So first it's going to check these two and return to me a result. But before it does this check, I could add, I'm going to type in here, add fade effect. And the fade effect is pretty simple. We're going to take our result, basically the variable that we have up here, and we're going to go ahead and grab onto this class list and going to add to its class list the fade class. Okay, so if I type in something, something, and something, it's going to add the fade to it. It's infinite. Woo! Now, when we recalculate this, it's sadly, you know what, I'm going to use smaller numbers here. So to 10 years and calculate. You see the fade effect, even if it doesn't take part anymore. So it doesn't appear anymore because it already has, so the DOM already added the fade class to this. Now, we can do a simple trick here, use a timeout and remove the class after a specific time from this result. So basically I could use a set timeout and I'm going to use here, you want me to use function? Okay, function. You also use the arrow function here. So function and this callback function will take our result dot class list, and this time we're going to remove the class of fade from it. So fade, remove, and this should take comma, let's say after 1 second. Basically, let's calculate here something again, 2%, 10 years, and let's hit calculate. Now if I change the monthly contribution 100 and it calculate again, it's going to re-add this. So let me just show you what actually happens. Let's go to our elements, let's select this element. You see it has the title of fade. So if I click on calculate, it's going to add that fade class to it and it's going to remove it very quickly. And boom, it's gone. So this is basically it. This is our project. Let's do a quick calculation. Let's say you have $50,000. Boom. And you invested for 10 years you invested, let's say for 30 years. Let's say you have 10,000. It's more realistic. You should have 10,000. $10,000 or 10,000 whatever's, and you invested for 10 years. Now for 10 years, you should calculate with 10%, but minus inflation, which is currently 8. But on a long term, you should calculate with roughly 3, depending on in which country. You could check out your country's regular inflation or yearly inflation on a 10 years basis, and I would go with 7, but this is the most I would go with. So 7, because this is interest rate minus inflation, 30 years, and let's say you don't add anything to it, then it's going to return $81,000. Now, if you would contribute to this, let's say $200 monthly, which should be possible, then you're going to end up $325,159.11. And wait, I forgot something. I forgot to add the $sign to this. So let's go back to our result. And let's say we are returning here this, and this ends here. So I'm going to do here a plus and a string of $. I'm going to take this, copy it, and add it also down here. And now it should be a ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum, and da-dum, and $sign. Okay, perfect. So everyone, that's it. This is the project. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and share it with others who would like to see this project. Once again, the entire code is down in the description below. If you have any kind of questions or suggestions, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. And if you're not already subscribed, then please consider doing so, because we're posting new content like this on a regular basis. So with this being said, catch you on the flip side. Bye-bye.